Discover the shocking secrets of 2 Samuel that will change your understanding of the Bible. Few knew what truly happened that night in Hebron. A night where blood-soaked whispers haunted the air. Where ambition and betrayal plotted a deadly dance. David, a king on the rise, found himself shrouded in shadows. Just days before, he had been a humble shepherd, the unlikely chosen one, but now he was soaring higher than anyone could have imagined. Could he truly handle what awaited him? The atmosphere crackled with tension. The stars above bore witness to the seething emotions below. A throne awaited, but so did a storm of unrest. David stood at the crossroads of destiny, but ominous signs loomed ahead. His friend-turned-rival, Abner, had declared allegiance to Saul's son, Ishbosheth, and whispers of treachery circled like vultures. What twist of fate would emerge from this tangled web of loyalty and deceit? As the moon hung heavy, illuminating the ground stained with conflicts past, David's heart raced. He had been on the run, hunted like prey, yet he now sought the kingdom. But at what cost? Conspiracies ignited his path, and the swords drawn were as sharp as the accusations hurled in the stillness of night. Would David's thirst for power lead to tragedy or triumph? Each choice felt like a heartbeat away from disaster, echoing through the ages, what lay buried beneath the dirt, stories of blood and friendship unraveling before the dawn. Were alliances forged in the fires of desperation doomed to shatter? As David steered through the gathering darkness, every moment dripped with suspense. The flickers of candlelight revealed faces filled with hope and fear alike. Would the kingdom he craved come at a price too great to bear? His path forked dangerously ahead, each direction a gamble with fate. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As dawn broke over Hebron, a pale light kissed the earth, washing away the shadows that had danced through the night. Yet, the darkness lingered in the hearts of those who had gathered, facing an uncertain future. David stood atop a rocky rise, his eyes sweeping across the land that soon might bear his rule. His hands trembled slightly, grappling with the weight of what lay ahead, a kingdom built upon both hope and fear, love and betrayal. The tension between loyalty and ambition curled like smoke in the air. He remembered the promises exchanged by friends now turned rivals, the delicate threads of faith torn apart by ambition. Abner's voice haunted him, filled with both daring and challenge as he pledged allegiance to Ishbosheth. David had spent countless nights pondering the path that remained before him, the choices that stretched out like paths through a maze, each with its own set of trials. The morning sun gradually lit the faces of David's closest followers, men who had once shared his humble beginnings in the fields of Bethlehem. There was Joab, fierce and loyal yet prone to a ruthless streak that worried David. Beside him, Abishai, cocky and eager for glory, often spoke of battle as if it were a sport to be won. Such camaraderie brought warmth, yet beneath the surface simmered doubts and fears of impending conflict. Shall we call for Abner? Joab finally asked, breaking the heavy stillness. We should gather our strength, confront him before his plans fully unfold. Strength must meet strength. The suggestion hung in the air heavy with eagerness, but David hesitated. What would it mean to confront a man who had once pledged him loyalty, now turned to the son of his greatest foe? The world around him felt as if it held its breath, awaiting a divine sign. Would the Almighty reveal his plan? Would his heart know the right path amid the rising clamor of those around him? David lifted his hands, feeling the grains of earth slip through his fingers like moments lost. His thoughts drifted, reflecting on the ancient stories of his people, tales steeped in struggle, faith, and the ever-present search for divine guidance, and just as the sun began to rise higher, spreading warmth and life, the unexpected came in the form of a whisper of wind, brushing against his cheek as if the very Spirit of God was present, urging him to consider the weight of compassion amidst his pursuit of power. Was it not God who said, "Vengeance is mine," and so, too, the establishment of kings? In that moment, he felt the weight of sovereignty coalescing into both a blessing and a curse. His heart pulsed with a question that transcended time and circumstance. What is a king without understanding? What power exists without the wisdom to wield it? As he stood there, the sun rising higher, illuminating a choice yet to be made, he felt a profound sense of unrest. In the pursuit of his destiny, could he remain true to the heart of his God, untainted by the ambition that consumed the hearts of men like Abner and Ishbosheth? In that moment, he realized that the roads laid before him were not merely paths toward kingship, they were invitations into the depths of his soul. Would his choices reflect the righteousness of his heart or the tumult of his desires? His soul felt as if it were a pendulum, swinging between hope and dread, the fabric of identity woven from both shadow and light. As he turned to face his companions once more, the air thick with expectation, he found himself at a crossroads, armed with questions yet unresolved. In a world filled with power struggles and conspiracies, was there a chance for mercy amidst the ambition? Would he be able to navigate the intricacies of loyalty while holding fast to the hopes of his people? With the sun climbing across the horizon, the echoes of the decision yet to be made loomed within him, begging this profound question: in the pursuit of a throne, how does one ensure that the heart remains untainted by the lust for power? As the sun climbed higher, its rays poured forth like promises, illuminating the faces of David's closest followers, yet also casting shadows that danced in the corners of his mind. He knew this journey toward kingship was not only a passage of political maneuvering but a deep exploration of the human spirit, his spirit. The heaviness of unvoiced dreams wrapped around him, and he turned to the men who had stood by him through trials rife with danger and uncertainty. "Gather the men," David commanded, the resolve in his voice mingled with an uncertainty that did not escape his own ears. "We must consider our next steps carefully." Joab nodded, a fierce glint in his eyes, keen for action, while Abishai clapped a hand on David's shoulder, emboldened by the call of adventure. Yet amid the stirring excitement, David felt an unsettling chill, a whisper that warned against recklessness. As the men spread out, deploying for their tasks, David wandered further away from the encampment, seeking solace in the beauty of the landscape. He sank onto a boulder, the earth cool beneath him. It was here, in this moment of solitude, he contemplated the legacy of his ancestors. Moses, who dared confront Pharaoh with nothing but a promise; Joshua, who stood before the formidable walls of Jericho, believing in divine intervention. What roused his spirit most was the face of his father, Jesse, who had instilled in him a love for the Lord, teaching him that true strength came not from swords but from the heart. David marveled at this truth and felt conflicted. He could hear the voices of warriors praising strength and dominance, yet deeper still resonated the quiet knowing imparted by wisdom and patience. As the sound of laughter and shouts arose from the makeshift camp, the aroma of a fire wafted through the air, beckoning him back to reality. Yet, before he could rise, an unsettling thought washed over him. In the pursuit of a kingdom, he pondered, did he dare risk the integrity of his own heart, or would he be able to illuminate a path defined by faith? The gentle breeze wrapped around him again, sturdy yet light, as if inviting him to listen more closely to the stirrings of his soul. Suddenly, a rustling in the bushes pulled at his attention, causing him to instinctively reach for his sling, a reminder of his past as a shepherd, defending flocks from predators. Emerging from the foliage was a figure cloaked in the humble garb of a traveler. The stranger approached, hands raised, his visage worn and wise, as though he had seen the world unfold in all its splendor and decay. "Hail, David of Bethlehem," the traveler intoned, his voice laced with an ancient wisdom. "Not by might nor by power shall the hearts of men be won, but by understanding and mercy." David blinked, taken aback by the strangeness of the moment. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, curiosity blending with caution. "I am one who wanders the paths of kings and their folly," the traveler replied. "I bring you a warning. The heart of man is feeble, swayed easily by desire. Consider as you stand at this precipice of power." David felt the weight of those words resonate within him. The traveler continued, will you mirror the ambitions of those who come for your crown, or will you rise above, shining as a beacon of justice? The land of Israel awaits your choice, and so does the Almighty. The stranger's presence loomed larger, embodying the very choices that lay before David. He felt as if he were peering into a great chasm, filled with uncertainty and promise. What if I fail? David whispered, grappling with the anxiety coiling in his chest. Then seek the heart of God when storms arise. Know that failure is but a step toward understanding, for even the mightiest falter. Your kingdom is not solely defined by crowns, but by the integrity of your spirit. With that, the figure turned, moving back into the bushes until he was but a dark silhouette against the growing light of day. David sat in silence, left with the echo of the traveler's wisdom cascading through his mind, a weighty challenge to his soul. As he returned to the camp, his heart heavy with the burden of leadership yet illuminated by a flicker of hope, he contemplated the revolt brewing before him. What path would he choose, and would he remain grounded in empathy, or would the rising tides of ambition drown the gentle whispers of his heart? In essence, David pondered deeply, in the pursuit of greatness, how does one remain faithful to a calling that transcends personal ambition? As David made his way back to his encampment, a mixture of hope and trepidation unfolded within him. The laughter and revelry of his men resonated through the air, yet they felt strangely distant, overshadowed by the weight of the traveler's words. Each step towards the fire seemed to carry him further from the serene simplicity he once found in the fields of Bethlehem, and closer to the turbulent sea of leadership. Upon his return, he found Joab and Abishai deep in discussion, their gestures animated as they plotted the routes of their next raids. The energy of the warriors filled the space, their ambitions palpable. Yet, in the depth of their excitement, David couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing beneath their bravado. He should have felt invigorated, yet unease gripped him like a vice. David, Abishai exclaimed, his voice punctuating the air with fervor. We need to strike while the iron is hot. With our forces united, we can crush our enemies before they gather strength. A murmur of agreement rippled through the men surrounding the fire, their eyes gleaming with adrenaline. Let us not be reckless, David replied, the raised voice of authority tempered by a plea for caution. I have been reminded of weightier matters than conquest alone. Joab, ever the steadfast general, met David's gaze with a flash of confusion. What weighs upon you, my king? Our moment approaches. How can we not seize the day? But it was not merely ambition that stirred within David, it was the echo of divine counsel, urging him to pause and reflect. There is strength in patience, Joab. We must seek the Lord's guidance before charging into conflict. The words left his lips, informed by the fear of leading his men into a battle won only by blood rather than principle, yet, the roar of ambition coiled around them like a consuming fire, tempting them all to dismiss his caution as indecision. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon David, knowing that to lead was to walk a delicate line between the loyalty of his men and his own unwavering commitment to righteousness. Over the evening, as the fire crackled, stories were exchanged, their victories retold in vivid colors that danced in the flames. David listened, his heart swelling with pride for these men who had devoted themselves to him, exchanging their own dreams for his future. But with each tale, a growing void within himself deepened, a longing for more than what was presented at the surface. In a moment of reflection, David rose from the gathering, seeking solitude beneath the starlit sky. The twinkling lights seemed to whisper secrets of the universe, speaking of a purpose beyond earthly aspirations. Beneath the vastness, he felt small yet significant, drawn into a recognition of divine destiny at play. In the quiet, he murmured, Lord, guide me in this moment. Help me understand the balance between leading with valor and listening with humility. His words hung in the air, mingling with the cool breeze that carried the scent of unseen blossoms, illuminating the night with potential. It was in that stillness that a haunting question arose. With hearts they fought for and a kingdom they would gain, would they still recognize the divine hand in their triumphs? Would blood shed in pursuit of power quench the divine purpose for which they were called, or would it lead them astray, overshadowing the promise carved out for Israel's future? As dawn's first light began to soften the edges of night, David stood at the precipice of decision. Realizing that within this budding kingdom laid a labyrinth of choices, he found himself pondering a profound thought: what does it truly mean to follow a path of righteousness in the face of overwhelming temptation? As the sun rose, casting golden rays across the encampment, David returned to his men with a newfound resolve. Each flicker of light seemed to breathe life into his weary spirit, awakening a sense of divine purpose within him. Yet, lingering at the edges of his consciousness were the shadows of his doubts, the haunting question of how to lead them with grace and righteousness. The men gathered in anticipation, their faces reflecting the fervor of the day's potential. David took a breath, welcoming the strength of the sun as it poured over his shoulders. "Brothers," he began, his voice steady and clear, "our path is not merely one of conquest, but of a greater calling. We must seek the Lord, for he alone knows the heart of our mission." Joab's brow furrowed, and a hint of impatience danced in his eyes. "You speak of prayers and queries, my king, while our enemies gather. Will we miss our opportunity for glory?" "With glory comes responsibility," David replied, the weight of his role pressing firm upon him. "If we act too hastily, we risk becoming the very scourge we seek to root out. We must embody the justice we proclaim. The Lord has seen us through trials, yet our future is cloaked in his wisdom." A silence fell over the warriors, each man wrestling with the pull between ambition and piety. David searched their faces, hoping to encounter the reflection of his own conviction, but found uncertainty lurking in their gazes, a brewing storm of loyalty and legacy running parallel to his spiritual yearning. "All we have fought for," Abishai finally murmured, "to win by the hand of the Lord or the blood of man?" At that moment, it seemed as if time stood still. David felt the heaviness of their collective gaze urging him forward, yet behind their fervor lay an unspoken truth: the temptation to seek victory through might alone was a dangerous siren's song. "What if," David whispered, his heart beckoning for them to listen, "our true strength lies not in the sword, but in the wisdom bestowed upon us? A chance to seek counsel not just for direction against our foes, but for understanding and compassion in our hearts." With this declaration, David fervently led them into prayer, urging them to set aside their ambitions and battles for a sacred moment to seek the divine presence among them. They knelt, hardened warriors softened under the weight of humility. Together, they formed a circle, hands clasped, filled with hope and a burgeoning sense of unity unlike any David had felt before. As they prayed, an unexpected stillness enveloped the camp, as if the air itself was thick with anticipation. Deep within his spirit, David felt the stirring of something powerful, a whisper of divine promise that transcended their immediate desires for conquest. Vision blurred with unvoiced emotion, he began to fathom that their true destination lay not in kingdoms built on the backs of their enemies but in a unity forged through faith. Yet, with the flicker of light also came the dread of what might lie ahead. Would their commitment to righteousness withstand the trials of war? As David opened his eyes, the faces of his men reflected diverse emotions: reverence, confusion, and a flicker of fear mingled with newfound resolve. "Men of Israel," David's voice rang out, "let us not be swayed by the thirst for glory or power. Instead, let us anchor ourselves in love for one another and in faith. For what is a kingdom without justice, and what is a ruler without righteousness?" The air thickened with his words, reverberating through the hearts and minds of those assembled. Questions loomed in the silence, challenging their paths and aspirations, igniting an internal battle between ambition and divine intention. And as the day unfolded, David felt spiraling within him a deeper, unsettling question: in a world swayed by power and ambition, how could one's heart remain tethered to the whispers of divine guidance? Would their choice to pursue righteousness hold steadfast in the heat of battle, or would the temptation for immediate victories draw them into a cycle of despair? As the day wore on, David led his men into the rugged terrain that surrounded their encampment. The air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves, mingling with an unshakable tension that hung between them as they moved. Each step felt laden with the gravity of their purpose, yet David sensed that something beyond the mortal plane was at play, a divine dance orchestrating their fates. The sun hung high, beating down and illuminating the path ahead. David could sense the shift in his men, their earlier fervor transformed into a meditative quietness as they walked in prayer. He knew that every footfall could echo with the promise of victory or the regret of misguided choices. Each soldier's heart was a battlefield, where the desires for honor and godliness clashed relentlessly. When they reached a rise overlooking a valley, David called for them to halt. The scene stretched before them, a stark contrast to the jubilation of their prayers. Dark clouds loomed ominously above the horizon, threatening to obscure the sun's warmth. "Look," he said softly, gesturing to the view. "Beyond this valley lies our foe, yet it also holds the possibility of redemption." A ripple of discontent surged among the men. Joab, emboldened by determination, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we have prayed. Now we must act. We cannot let the enemy remain in wait, for every moment we delay allows them to fortify their position." David turned his gaze towards Joab, heart heavy with the weight of decision. "The Lord equipped us with more than just swords, my brother. Let us not be quick to take up arms. What we see is a reflection of the larger struggle, one that spans beyond our immediate sight." At that moment, a soft wind-swept breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it an ethereal hush. David closed his eyes, and with an overwhelming longing, he sought the divine counsel that had guided him thus far. What was it that he truly needed in this hour? Victory, or wisdom? As he stood, lost in contemplation, the whispers of the past surged for the blend of triumphant songs and mournful laments of battles fought. He remembered how previous victories had come not through sheer force, but through the heart of obedience to God's will. Yet the echoes were mingled with the faces of the fallen, and the thought of their sacrifice loomed heavily. Were those lives lost in vain, or were they stepping stones towards a greater understanding? David broke the silence. To seek action is but a man's inclination. It is easier to wield a sword than to embrace vulnerability. But I wonder, brothers, what if our strength lies in uniting our hearts? Would that make us impenetrable to the devices of our enemy? Suddenly, a voice from among the crowd called out. "But what if they strike first, David? We cannot wait for Providence while they sharpen their blades." The men murmured in agreement, their fears laid bare. David felt a pang in his heart. He recognized their struggle, the same fight he faced within himself between the hard truths of reality and the illusions of faith. "What if God is waiting for us to prove our resolve?" Another added, stirring the group. "What if we are to fight not just against our enemy, but also to conquer the unrest in our minds?" David glanced upward, searching the heavens for an answer, but found only shadows casting doubt upon his quest. He felt a tugging in his spirit, as if something profound lingered just beyond his grasp. Perhaps the truth lay not merely in the act of battle but in understanding the very essence of their struggle. With resolve, he breathed deeply and prepared to guide them, yet an internal conflict thundered within his mind. Would the strength found in patience outlast the fire of their urgency? Would the choice to wait lead them to salvation, or render them vulnerable to destruction? In that pregnant pause before the impending storm, David's heart trembled at the unknown. The mystery of their journey loomed large, with questions spiraling deeper than the valley before them. How could they balance the call to action with the contemplative heart of faith? And what true strength would emerge when led by a spirit of love rather than one of wrath? As the sun began to dip behind the jagged mountains, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance upon the earth, David felt a deepening urgency in his spirit. His men stood restless, their anxiety rippling in the air like a taut string pulled too tightly. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon him. He sought once more to gather their hearts and minds before the impending confrontation. "Brothers," he began, his voice steady yet infused with a tremor of resolve, "I understand your fears. Each of you has faced trials, both in battle and in heart. We stand at a threshold, not merely of this valley, but of what it means to be true men of God. Today, the outcome of our encounter lies not just in our hands, but in our submission to His will." A low murmur swept through the men, wavering between doubt and faith. David paced slowly, attempting to gauge their hearts. He shared stories of past leaders, remembered champions who faced seemingly insurmountable odds, men like Gideon who, by God's decree, stripped away his army to a mere 300, yet triumphed over the Midianites through faith. Do we believe, then, that our might is greater than His will? Can we not see that strength in faith can encompass the whole? We might fight as warriors, however, the true battle is fought in the unseen, where faith and obedience become our strongest swords. The clouds above thickened, and the winds swirled robustly, as if nature itself was catching the breath of anticipation. David felt the tempest within his own heart rise at the weight of the collective uncertainty. Suddenly, a voice rang out, cutting through the tense Iona child's voice, bright and unyielding. From the outer edge of the gathered men, a young boy had ventured forth, too small to carry a sword yet undeniable in his presence. "Why do you waver, good king?" the boy asked innocently, yet the depth of his inquiry reverberated through the atmosphere. "Does not the God of Israel fight for us, and does he not guide you? Why, then, would you hesitate?" The inquiry hung delicately, forcing David to ponder the naive yet profound wisdom buoyed by faith. A flicker of realization ignited within him. Perhaps in their quest for understanding, they had lost sight of the simplicity of unwavering belief. "Even little ones are vessels of truth," he said softly, kneeling to meet the boy's gleaming eyes. The boy smiled, and for a moment, innocence rendered the complex fears lighter. "You are right. We must not falter. For in our weakness, his strength is made perfect." A fire seemed to reignite in the eyes of his men. Inspired, they began to murmur amongst themselves, rekindling the flicker of faith that had dimmed beneath the weight of urgency. David felt as if the very heavens were listening, and with humility, he regained their attention. "Let us henceforth call upon the Lord in prayer. For wisdom and courage shall be our armor, and love shall be our shield. We will not act out of fear, but from the certainty that he walks with us into the fray. Let us unite our hearts, not just with swords drawn, but with spirits open to his guidance." As they knelt together, hearts intertwined, their voices rose to the firmament, mingling prayers with the sound of the wind. With each utterance, they found solace within the turbulent shadows looming above. As the prayer ended, a profound stillness enveloped them, transcending their doubts and binding their souls. But amidst the sense of unity and the assurance of divine presence, a question quietly dawned within David's heart. How could they maintain this newfound peace of faith in the face of an approaching storm, and would the clear revelation gained from prayer be enough to withstand the darkness that lay ahead? The sun slipped further beneath the horizon, and as dusk draped its cloak across the valley, David wrestled with the truth of his own uncertainties. In the midst of preparation, before the grasp of battle, what revelations could still unfold? And would the trials they would face reveal a deeper strength hidden within their hearts, or cast them into shadows they feared to traverse? As the night deepened and stars twinkled like scattered diamonds against the velvety sky, David and his men gathered around the dwindling campfire, shadows flickering like restless spirits amidst the dark. The air was thick with anticipation, a mixture of hope and dread that swirled within each man's heart. It was a moment not only of preparation for battle but of introspection and communion, a chance to reflect on the ways that fear and faith intertwine within the human soul. In the flickering light, David glanced between his men, their faces etched with a spectrum of emotions. Some clutched their weapons tightly, knuckles white with anxiety, while others stared into the flames as if searching for divine wisdom in the crackling embers. Before long, David felt compelled to break the silence, to weave together the minds and souls of those gathered under the night sky. "Listen, my brothers. We find ourselves standing at the edge of something monumental. Not only for our survival but for the honor of our God and the calling upon our lives. We have witnessed his hand time and again, have we not?" His voice rose above the whispering winds, strengthened by the memories of Israel's past. "What if I told you that even this night holds mysteries yet unveiled? What if the very ground we tread is soaked with the prayers of those who walked before us?" A murmur of agreement echoed among them, some nodding thoughtfully, while others appeared lost in their private reveries. David seized the moment, urging them to reflect. "Consider our forefathers, men who stood where we stand now. Think of Abraham, who ventured into the unknown, believing the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, and testifying the faith that favored the obedient. Or Moses, who faced the mighty Pharaoh, emboldened not by his strength but by God's command. Each story illustrates a profound truth, that our struggles carry purpose beyond our sight." David's words washed over the men. The night air seemed to shimmer with an unseen presence as they pondered the legacies forged in struggles past. Yet David wrestled with his thoughts, understanding that for every victory celebrated, countless unseen battles were fought in the silence of the heart and mind. In every trial, he continued, leaning closer, resides the potential for transformation. What if this confrontation is not merely against flesh but an awakening of our spirit? What if we emerge from the darkness unshackled, our faith forged stronger than before? As he spoke, a stirring arose within the camp, a scattered sense of resolve. But even as he witnessed their spirits lift, doubt lingered like a specter in the back of his mind. He could not shake the unease that fluttered like a moth against the window of his soul. What if the enemy they faced represented not just a physical threat, but also the darkness of despair they each carried? What if the battle was not solely won with swords and shields but with hearts transformed by faith and unity? A sudden wind swept through the camp, rustling through the leaves and casting a shudder of chill among the men, pulling David from his thoughts. A faint glow flickered upon the horizon. Was it merely the moon rising, or was the first light of dawn giving way to something unspeakable, illuminating a path unknown? Let us embrace this night, not as the eve of despair, but as the beginning of revelation, David declared, hope igniting in his chest. Merging with the shadows, he dropped to his knees once more, inviting his men to join him in prayer, their voices merging in a harmonious tide carried by the winds of night. As they prayed, hearts beating like war drums, a stream of questions filled David's heart. Would the morning bring victory, or would it unveil trials meant to refine them further? What truths lay woven within the fabric of their fears, and could their deepest vulnerabilities be the very catalyst for salvation? The darkness held its breath as they united beneath the heavens, each man yearning for understanding, for strength, for release. What awaited them on the morrow, and how? Would their hearts bear the revelations that would unfold? Would faith dismantle the constraints of fear, or would they find themselves wrestling with shadows far greater than the swords they wielded? As dawn approached, the first light of day began to break over the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched out before the weary band of men. David rose from his knees, feeling the weight of the moment pressing upon him as if the very air vibrated with unanswered questions. The golden rays danced upon the dew that glistened on the grass, reminding him of the persistent presence of hope even in despair. Each drop of dew held the promise of a new day, and within that promise, echoes of potential yet to be realized. The men, rising from their prayer, stood in a circle, their faces now illuminated by the soft, warm glow of the sun's emergence. David regarded each one of them, searching their eyes for the courage he wished to instill. "Brothers," he began, his voice steady and resolute, "today, we are called not merely to defend our lives, our families, or our land, but to seek the heart of God in all we face. Let us not forget that the battle we enter this day is one not only of arms but of spirit." As they gathered their belongings, a silence overtook them, rich with anticipation and unspoken fears. David's heart swelled with the weight of responsibility. He could feel the stirring of something profound emerging in the depths of his soul. What if this day was to become a turning point not just for his men, but for the entire nation of Israel? The sun rose fully, banishing the remnants of night, yet the questions remained like shadows trailing behind each man. What did their faith truly demand of them? How would they respond in the face of adversity? Were they prepared to see beyond the immediate world and into the spiritual truths that undergirded their lives? With weapons in hand and hearts rooted in prayer, they set out towards the enemy camp, a swirl of emotions driving them forward. As they climbed the hill overlooking the valley below, David paused, feeling compelled to draw deeper connections with the silent voices of their past. What did the Lord teach us in battle before? When Gideon faced the Midianites with a small number, he did not wield swords but trusted in the power of faith and divine strategy. Remember the walls of Jericho that fell not by siege but by the sound of worshippers' praise. His words rang in the air like a clarion call, igniting a flicker of understanding in each heart. They were not alone. The Almighty's presence lingered amidst their gathering, resonating through history and into their current plight. As they descended into the valley, David watched the light dance across the faces of his men, their expressions shifting between determination and doubt. Yet, deep within him, the question gnawed ceaselessly: what lay beyond the physical confrontation? Would the encounter with the enemy unearth deeper truths within themselves, truths that had been buried beneath layers of fear, trauma, and unrealistic self-perceptions? More than the clash of swords, Would this battle reveal the landscape of their souls? As they neared the enemy's encampment, the sounds of those gathering for battle echoed eerily across the hills. David felt the tremor of fear in the air, a powerful reminder of the human struggle against the chaos surrounding them. What stood as an adversary embodied not just physical strength but the very fears and doubts that sought to paralyze their spirits. As they prepared to engage, David turned to his men one last time, their eyes wide and filled with the unknown. In this moment, understand that what we face is more than flesh and blood. May we look upon our adversaries with the eyes of David, the heart of a warrior, and the spirit of a faithful servant. Let our actions today stem from the deepest wells of our belief, and as they stood ready, swords gleaming under the rising sun, another question loomed large, restless in David's heart: could they rise above the fray of mere survival to embody the profound mysteries of faith, bravery, and divine purpose? What radical transformation awaited them within the trials that lay ahead, and how would they navigate the shadows, both external and internal, as the battle unfolded? As the dawn painted the horizon with hues of gold and crimson, David and his men braced themselves against the impending clash. The air was thick with tension, the weight of countless prayers buoying their spirits. Yet, even as they stood on the precipice of battle, the same central question flickered in David's mind: in striving for victory, could he lead his men not just with swords, but with hearts fully attuned to the teachings of the Almighty? The enemy encampment lay below, a restless sea of soldiers preparing for the confrontation. David's gaze swept across his band of warriors, all differing not just in stature but in conviction. Each face carried with it the suppressed fears that threatened to